Fazza's tears fell like stars' tails of a broken crown. The night over Dubai was silent, but the palace carried a storm. Sheikh Hamdan, the man the world adored as Fazza, stood by the window of his private chamber, staring into the endless desert horizon. The golden lights of the city shimmered below, yet his eyes were clouded with sorrow. They said a ruler's heart must be made of steel, but tonight his felt like glass, fragile, cracked and trembling. The wind outside carried whispers of the past, of laughter, of poetry, of love lost in the folds of time. Fazza closed his eyes, and memories came rushing back like waves against a lonely shore. He remembered her smile, the woman who once made him believe that even kings could be human. Her name was Layla, and she had entered his life like dawn breaking over darkness. Soft, bright, and inevitable, Layla was not of royal blood. She was an artist, a poet of the soul. Fazza first met her at a charity event, where she had been invited to read a poem. Her voice had a quiet magic, and when she spoke about love beyond crowns and kingdoms, Fazza felt something in him shift. He had spent years writing verses for others, but that night he found the subject of his greatest poem. For months they exchanged secret letters hidden in books, written in verses only they could understand. She called him the falcon with a broken crown, and he called her the star that refused to fade. But their love was fragile, delicate, a secret caught between tradition and rebellion. Then came the day when the whispers reached the council. A crown prince loving a commoner. It was a scandal that shook the golden walls of Dubai's royal house. The elders called it a threat to honor, while Fazza called it a truth too beautiful to be hidden. But even a prince's heart is bound by duty, and his voice was drowned by the echo of expectations. Layla was asked to leave. No goodbye, no farewell, only silence, cold and sharp as the edge of a sword. Fazza watched her walk away from the palace gardens, her white scarf fluttering like a final promise in the wind. Since that day, the world saw his smile, his charm, his poetry. But no one saw the storm that lived behind his calm eyes. Every verse he wrote since then carried her shadow. Every line was a prayer disguised as art. Tonight, standing by the window, Fazza whispered to the sky, "If stars could weep, they'd weep with me." And it was as if the heavens listened, for soon, tiny droplets of rain began to fall, glimmering like scattered diamonds. The desert never cried, yet tonight it did, and each drop felt like a reflection of the tears he refused to show the world. He reached for the crown resting on his desk, the golden symbol of power, duty, and sacrifice. It gleamed in the lamplight, perfect and untarnished. But to him it was broken, not by cracks, but by the weight of everything it had taken from him. He whispered, "A king can command a nation, but not his, the star that refused to fade." Far from the golden palace, in a quiet corner of Al-Fahidi's old district, Layla sat by a flickering lantern, tracing the lines of an unfinished poem. The night was soft, and the air smelled of rain, rare, delicate, and full of memories. Every drop that kissed the ground reminded her of him, Fazza, the name that still echoed in her heart like a forbidden melody. It had been 2 years since she left the palace, but time hadn't healed the wound. It had only taught her how to hide it. She had built a simple life, teaching children poetry, painting on old parchment and writing verses no one else would ever read. But in every poem, in every stroke of color, his face lived quietly between the lines. She often wondered if he still remembered her, or if royalty had forced him to forget. Yet deep down, she believed love that pure could never truly vanish. It lingered, even when unspoken. That night, as thunder whispered above the city, she opened her old notebook. Inside lay a letter, one she had never sent. My falcon, if love was a sin, then let my heart be guilty forever. I would rather carry your name in silence than forget it in peace. Your star, Layla. A single tear fell onto the page, smudging the ink. She closed the notebook and stood by her window, looking toward the distant skyline of Dubai. Even from miles away, she could see the glowing tower of the palace, the place where her story had begun, and where her soul still lived. At that very moment, across the city, Fazza stood on the balcony of his private chamber, watching the same storm unfold. His thoughts drifted to her, wondering if she still painted, if she still laughed, if she still believed in the words they once whispered under the moonlight. He had tried to move on, buried himself in duty, in poetry, in silence. But her absence echoed louder than any crown. A sudden knock on his door broke the spell. His trusted aide entered, holding a small envelope. Your Highness, this was delivered anonymously. It seems personal. Fazza opened it slowly. Inside was a single piece of paper covered in familiar handwriting. It was a poem. When the falcon broke his crown, the stars wept into the sand. But love, true love, never bowed, for it was never meant to end. His hands trembled. There was no signature, but he knew. The handwriting, the rhythm, the soul. It was hers. Layla had sent it. Or perhaps fate had found a way to deliver what words alone could not. Without hesitation, Fazza left the palace that night, dressed simply, unguarded. The rain had turned into a gentle drizzle as he drove through the narrow lanes of old Dubai, the streets where once, before titles and crowns, he had felt free. He stopped near the art school where Layla taught. Through the window, he saw her, older, quieter, but still carrying the same light in her eyes. She was reading poetry to children, her smile soft and real. He didn't enter. He just watched. The night after their silent meeting lingered in Fazza's mind like a dream, half remembered. He could still see her face reflected in the glass, not as a stranger from the past, but as the missing verse of a poem he had never finished. For the first time in years, he felt alive. But the reality of his world returned swiftly. The meetings, the advisors, the endless talk of alliances and duty. His father's health had grown frail, and the council had begun whispering about succession. The nation's future rested on his shoulders, but his heart was elsewhere, still standing outside that window in Al-Fahidi, still lost in the eyes of the woman who had once made him believe in forever. That evening, Fazza sat in the royal library surrounded by silence. He pulled out a blank sheet of paper and began to write, not as a prince, but as a man desperate to tell the truth. My star, time has taken much from me, laughter, peace, even dreams. But it could never take you. If destiny allows, meet me once more where sand meets sea and the moon keeps our secret. Your falcon? He sealed the letter and sent it through a trusted servant who knew where to find her. 2 days later, under the soft glow of the crescent moon, Layla stood at the quiet beach near Jumeirah, the same place they once shared their first stolen moment of love. The waves whispered like old friends carrying the scent of the sea and the past. And then she saw him. No crown, no guards, no distance. Just Fazza, the man beneath the royal title. He walked toward her slowly, the wind tugging at his cloak, his eyes filled with emotion too long restrained. Neither spoke at first. The silence said everything words could not. When they finally met, Layla's voice trembled. "You shouldn't have come, my prince." He shook his head gently. "I stopped being a prince the day I lost you." A tear glimmered in her eye, but she smiled through it. "You carry a crown, Fazza. You can't run from it." He took her hand, his touch soft but certain. "I'm not running. I'm remembering who I am, not just a ruler, but a man. A man who loved you then and still loves you now." The waves rolled closer, washing their feet as if sealing the moment in eternity. Layla looked down, her heart torn between love and fear. "The world will never accept this. They'll call me unworthy. They'll say I broke your honor." Fazza raised her chin, his gaze steady. "They broke my honor when they made me silence my truth. You didn't break my crown, Layla. You made me see what it meant to wear one." For a long moment she said nothing. Then, with a trembling breath, she whispered, "And if the world burns because of us?" He smiled, the same boyish smile that had once stolen her heart. "Then let it burn. From its ashes we'll build something honest." The moonlight shimmered on the waves as he pulled her into an embrace. Not a fairy tale one, but the kind forged by pain and persistence. They stood there, bound by the